G'day guys, Calvin, Cartoon Company in New Zealand. So I think I'm going to do another useless information about the VVti engines. I've done one in the past, and there might be a few things that I cross over on. But I'm doing a wiring loom here, and I was going to do a video on the throttle lock that you can put in a throttle body, but it doesn't work on standard ECU, so I think I'll do that one separate. I'm working on this particular loom here, and I am partway through it, going through, putting some new connectors on. I'll see if I've got some footage of what the connector looked like before. So this is just the normal 20 series UCF20 VVti. We've got the normal broken plugs and smash plugs. I suspect they're going to have a problem because that's the end of the VVti solenoid. Yep, that is what that is. Crankshaft position sensor plug. You can't see it either. No, it's not an invisible one. It's not Bluetooth. It's busted. There's a diagnostic box which is going to come off. Plugs that are all cracked and hard and broken and yucky. And then we come over here, and how's this for a challenge for me today? Pretty normal also is they aren't supplied with these two or this plug. So I'll have to search and grab them out of my new I've got them new, so that's not too much of a biggie. We can tell it's UCF20 because it's got this big 26 pin plug on it, body plug, and it's got a round rubber grommet. All pretty straightforward sort of stuff. I've done plenty of them. And I'm going to throw out what I say is useless information, but it's questions that get asked a lot, and people just simply don't know some of this really basic stuff. The bit that I'm doing at the moment, I'm going to put in some wires into this wiring loom. It's off a UCF20 VVti, and I'm going to run 2 wires in for the water temp sensor. And I'm putting these 2 extra wires in. But wait, you say, why am I putting wires into the loom for a water temp sensor? And this is one of the questions when I see about wiring them, is they don't have one. They have one that goes to the ECU, and then the ECU sends the signal to the dash through the multiplex or Toyota's proprietary CAN system. And this confuses a lot of guys, but it's really basic with a lot of modern cars. This is how they work. So they don't have the fitting or the wire in the loom. The only ones that do are the 151 Crown VVTIs. They've got it, no multiplex. All the others, no water temp wire. And what's really funny is when guys start talking about it, they go back to giving info on the non-VVTi. So the non-VVTi, I've got the EFI temp sensor here, and the one for the gauge on the top, the single wire. VVTi, however, have got the EFI temp sensor and a blank. A blank. There it is, look. So if you want to fit a temp gauge on your conversion, that's where you put it. Right there, look at that. And you can see this one has got the temp sensor fitted for the gauge. That one there, gauge, ECU. Gauge, ECU. When I'm doing a wiring loom, I whip it all apart because I get this stuff. Here it is, look, this stuff. So often I braid them up. This one's a little bit budget, 4-wheel drive trials truck. It's going to get a bit tight. But I'm still going through the connectors, and the connectors are just on the edge. So I'm working away, and I get some connectors that look absolutely perfect, like this. And you get this one. This one looked absolutely perfect. The little tab, perfect. And then the inside just fell to pieces. I touched it, and it just disintegrated. What I see happen on a loom like this is guys go, it's in really good order. And this one is. It's actually pretty good. But within this really good condition, there might be 25% of the plugs, 20% of the plugs that are not in good condition. So when I touch them, they end up like this. And I can't tell which ones are which until I touch them with that. And then they just shatter. And this is why I go through them properly and sort them properly. I've moved into the transmission department. And it's really easy when you find a plug like this that are broken. So that one's pretty obvious, it's stuffed, it needs a new one. And then you get these ones like this that aren't broken, but when you try to take the terminal out, it won't come out. The only way I can get that out is to cut it to pieces. Even if I cut to pieces, it won't come out. Please don't break, little tool. Please don't break. Oh, it's well stuffed. And the same thing applies with the solenoid plug. The VVti went to the 5-speed box, or 5-speed transmission, and they changed the solenoid plug over the early ones. And again, the shifter plug, shift selector, in here it's all brittle. The stuff in here is there's just grease, dielectric grease, so that's okay. That's not actually a problem, but these plastic bits in here are all falling to pieces. The 1UZ VVti is when they switched over to the 5-speed transmission, the A650. And there's a few different versions, just in different ratios. So guys that are interchanging them, they can, but if you get it wrong, you will have problems because they aren't all the same. There is one model of VVti that has a 4-speed 4-wheel drive transmission on it as well, just to catch people out. And they're very, very uncommon. We only just recently came across one. I hadn't seen one for a long, long time before that, probably 3 or 4 years. So it's not very often that I see them. With the looms on the VVti's too, there are different versions. They're not all the same. This is an early one with the big coil packs, or the big coils, coil-on plugs, and the loom comes out the rear of the engine. The later model ones, they go out the front, something that people often get wrong. On the 1UZ and the 3UZ, there's two different kinds of coils. So this is the early 1UZ VVti coil, and it is possible to swap to the later model 1UZ VVti or the 3UZ or the 2UZ, all run that later coil. So if you're running this one here and you want to change to the later one, then you can change the connectors and the pinout appropriately and swap them over. That is the late 1UZ VVti, or after 2000. That's the UCF20 or the 151 Crown VVti coils. I seem to have a lump in this crank sensor wiring, and look at that, there were 3 connectors taped in, all in the same spot, no staggering. So there's another repair that I will have to sort. Also to note, the exhaust flange. So this one's got a set of my headers on. That exhaust flange on the VVti is the same as the exhaust flange on the non-VVti. So that's the same set of headers on both engines. This loom's almost done. So the main loom's finished. It's time to do relays and fuses. And I've just had these arrive. 26 pin locking plug. So it means that I can use the standard plug here, standard connector, to do the job. Now it's going to make my life way easier because I don't have to put a new connector on. I don't have to crimp those wires off. And there's a heap of wires in here that I can use. I've also left this one off, so there's oil pressure and there's water temperature. So they go along to the respective paces on the engine. Oil, oh that's the water temp, it's got blue. So I can have connectors put on it when the sensor's put in. And the oil pressure is the same. And the alternator light. So I've done something different here and added the alternator wiring to this loom. So this loom's pretty much all complete, everything for the engine itself. Other interesting things, if you think they're interesting, with the VVTIs over the early engines, they changed the design of the covers here and here. Probably because they put a VVTi gear in here. But it means that this unit and this unit are different between the non-VVTi and the VVTi. The early engines ran a 12 tooth trigger wheel. The VVTi run a 36 minus 2. So there's 2 missing there. So if they were there, there'd be 36, but there's not 36. There's 34 with 2 missing. But we call it a 36 minus 2. Also notice how this doesn't go as deep as those. That's actually quite important, as I found out recently. On the 3UZ VVTi, they run different power steer pumps. I don't have one with a power steer pump here. But the engine I'm actually going to fit this loom up to today is a 3UZ. But it's got a 1UZ VVTi power steer pump on it. There's a difference in the way they mount with regards to a stud onto the block rather than onto the heads, so that's a little bit different. Immobilizers. Most, but not all of the VVTIs are immobilized. The early Crown VVTi did not come with an immobilizer fitted. They also didn't have that CAN bus thing, so they can be picked up by the fact that they've got a temperature sender or for the gauge. The one beside that EFI one, or the one that's normally blanked off, well, those ones have one. And they often have no immobilizer fitted, if you're looking for it. Otherwise, they've got a immobilizer. Okay. So I've got some relays and fuses just about finished, ready to go onto this engine. And I need to do some testing and checking. I'm going to pop the loom onto my test engine. As I've said earlier, this is actually a 3UZ long filler stalk, but it'll all work just fine. Standard loom going under the intake. AVIS solenoid, recently I changed that because they are prone to failing. So I recommend doing that when you do a prep on these engines. And the small coils are leaving and then they're going the big coils. And at some point I will do a video on swapping from the early coil to the late coil. So the VVTi engines don't run a return line from the engine. They have an inlet. line right here with a dampener there. They have a second dampener over there. The regulator is actually found in the fuel tank. So quite a different way of doing it to what a lot of people are used to. But it's becoming more and more common with a lot more late model cars. That gets a little bit tricky, and I have probably for the last 10 years, 2, maybe 3 people a year ring and they say, my VVti is running really, really rich. And I'm like, cool, what have you done for the fuel regulator? And they go, well, it doesn't have one, we didn't put one on. And they've just plumbed the fuel pump directly into the engine and put like 120 psi into them. And they don't run so good like that, they tend to overfuel. So you need to do something about that, which I'll cover in a different video. This happens to be a 3UZ ECU. They can have their immobilizers flashed off, which is a great advantage, and there's some other things that are really good about them. I'll put that aside for my next job, because I'm doing 3UZ. There is a video coming on reflashing of 3UZ ECUs, so that's coming up. Oil filler. Long stalky thing. Little 1UZ. Long stalky is 3UZ. Little one 1UZ VVti. Someone said the other day that you can't put a 3UZ throttle body onto a 1UZ VVti. Now I've been putting a 1UZ VVti throttle body onto my 3UZ for ages because my test VVti engine is a 3UZ. They run the same injectors, so I can do it. You know, the computer will be fine. Early ones are all the same as far as injector goes, the dynamics, and they'll fire up fine. Different airflow meters, 2 different options. Different size breathers on the tappet covers between a 3UZ and a 1UZ. But let's find out about this throttle body thing, eh? Think we're going to swap them over, see if they change, see if they interchange. The 1UZ VVti does have a drive-by-wire throttle body. Guys think because the cable is located to the throttle body that it's not drive-by-wire. There's a big motor here, look at this, it's a motor. I have just done a video explaining the throttle body and I stripped one to bits. So go check that one out if you want to know more about these throttle bodies. It seems to fit to me. You have to change the studs because it's different there.
Oh no, it fit. You changed that. It fit.
And then there's a different fitting here. So this one has a small hose there that comes up. So it's slightly different, but it can be changed. Oh, I should actually talk. See this housing here? This is a 3UZ housing. This is the water bypass housing. And they're thinner, they're smaller, which is handy if you're mounting a supercharger on them. Not that I recommend doing that, because it's got small rods and small pistons. See this one here? This is a 1UZ VVti. Oh, it looks just like the other one. But you'll notice here, that housing at some point has been changed. Have I got a proper 1UZ VVti? Back room. We're good. So this is the proper 1UZ VVti housing. You see how it's much bigger in this area here? So that's a difference with the 1UZ VVti. So what's that? That's the VSV for the charcoal canister, part of the emission system. What is that? That's a noise suppressor. 1UZ VVti's only have one. 3UZs have 2 of them. They're right there. So my 3UZ throttle body fits my 1UZ engine when it's got a 3UZ thermostat housing on it. So I may not have proved anything at all. I may just have proved that you can change them if you change that housing as well. So I better put it on a proper one. Back in a minute. I now have a wiring loom strapped to my engine. And I've got the correct airflow meter. See, this is the early VVti. It's a big wide cartridge unit. And that matches the ECU. We can use the later model ones, but we have to change the pin out. That's a video for another day. Actually, on the intake, I'm not sure if you've seen my video on fitting a non-VVti intake or interchanging. They don't interchange, okay? You can't put a non-VVti onto the VVti easily. Or vice versa. Can't be done. But what you can do, like the early ones, where you can reverse them and put the throttle body at the other end. On the early ones, it's on the other side. The VVTIs, you can change it to the other end. It can go backwards. I did that on the Oxbow off-road trials truck. So if you haven't seen that video, go check that one out. Now my relays and fuses are underway. We go through, we do some testing, and I test the whole lot. It does help that I kind of know where things are meant to go. And I'll go through and do the whole wiring loom to check it as much as I can before it leaves. And I know that what I've done is going to work and run the engine. So it's not a loom issue, it's something else if it doesn't go. Hopefully there isn't actually anything else wrong. We do cross our fingers a little bit. Right, so I've got this one off. This has got the proper 1UZ housing on it. Nope, that fits just fine. Couple of changes of studs, that would work just fine. You can see here, we've got the belt routing with the idler, just to keep that a bit neater, not stripping a hydraulic fan pump, and no air conditioning. So that is the configuration I use when not running air conditioning. Drive, and drives over here as well, there. Oh, there. Three. There. Three. Two. And two's over here. Bang, 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 bang. Awesome. Tuk, tuk, tuk. I think I hear a throttle body. That's working. Woohoo! Check the fan circuit. Wire up on the engine here. Beauty. Should I get a fan switch? And a fan switch to be mounted in the radiator. Fuel pump. If I give it a crank, fuel pump should go. It's time for me to fire this whole setup up. I've got the bucket of noise on the floor. Of course, we've only got that single fuel line going into the engine. So there is an external regulator somewhere else. Mine happens to be at my fuel filter in my Coke bottle that's cut down in my bucket of noise. We're not going to go there. It's worked well for more than 10 years, so we're not going to hassle it. In this area here, I have added an ignition switch. So the customer isn't going to get the switch. He's going to connect it into the key. There's a white wire. That's about 1.5 meters long from the relays and fuses. The white wire is the permanent battery power to the ignition switch. And it's fused. It's fused on the Alt S fuse in the fuse box. The red is ignition on, so that's the return back, turns everything on. And the green is the starter motor. It's good. Of course it won't go because it's not turned on at the moment. I've also added another loom with these two switches. And I'm going to need to mark which ones they are, eh? So one of these is for the drive 4 switch, or like the overdrive. And the other one is for the 1-2 switch. You might have a little discussion on shifters really soon. I put 12 volts to the big red stud. Easy. I've plugged in, and over here, this is where the ignition plugs in, nice and simple. There also happens to be a taco wire, which is purple. There's an extra earth in here. And we've probably got another colour. What do we got? Orange. We've got an orange wire, which happens to be an ignition on, fused via the trans fuse. So that's good for the gauges if you want to wire gauges. And this one, as extras, we've got 2 over here, which is our brake light switches if we want to put brake light switches in. There's 2 of them because it normally runs a 4 wire stoplight switch. And what is that one there? That will be the check engine light. That white orange is the check engine light. It's probably never getting connected because it's a trials truck. I've got my scan tool, and I will go through and check some operations of things. Because I was getting a bit short on fuses, I've added relays with fuses to make sure that everything's protected properly. I know I say fuses are for pussies. We've just done a job that literally had no fuses in the engine wiring. None. How that car didn't catch, well, it obviously never had a fault, did it? So maybe the wiring was really good, and so good it didn't need fuses. But I don't recommend it. Fuses are a good thing. Right, I think we're ready to go. Take this. Turn it on. I hear the humming of the throttle body. Zzz. And I take this, and it doesn't matter which one of these I put on, both have got power. So I go through really quickly and do a series of tests. Check it runs on all cylinders. I check that it's got charging voltage. So this one is a little different, where I've made it like a 3UZ that has the alternator wiring in the main engine harness. So it kind of makes it more complete for the kind of vehicle that it is. It's running, sounding great, all cylinders working, alternator's charging, things are working like they should. When you start a VVti, whether it's a 3UZ or a 1UZ VVti, this little flappy thing, either could be AVIS or AVIC, it should move. Okay, so it's up when it's off. I'm not sure I want to start this from behind the engine. I've been doing oxygen sensor testing too. I think we're okay. Don't think we're going to tear that to pieces. Won't start. Ah! Somebody's been doing gear shifter testing. Here it is. Put it into park, eh? Oh, I think that's low. Put it into park. Won't start in that gear. Did you see it move? We'll do it again for you. You watching nice and close? Always check that moves, otherwise you're going to lack bottom end power. The last test I'm going to do is I'm going to run through and check the shifters are working like it should. Now this is going to run a normal shifter and two switches. So this is the correct 5-speed VVti shifter, and when it comes through, well, it's still got the 6 positions on the transmission itself. However, it's got the ability to change it from 4 to drive to 4 and low and 2 down the bottom. Let's see if I can do it with one hand, can I? Hold the button, yep, ready. So it does this motion here, where it's not moving the lever, but it's locking it out of drive and locking it with the maximum gear of 4. And down here it holds it in low. So that's the 5-speed one. This is the 6-speed, quite different in the design, where it's got like the Tiptronic thing at the bottom. So he's not running one of these. So instead of running the proper VVti shifter, he is going to be running a couple of switches. His boss has got one on his trials truck, does the same thing, works perfect. And by understanding how the shifter works, allows us to do it that way. I'm just going to check that it actually works. That's pretty much the end of my useless information. It's kind of useful if you're doing VVTIs. I'm going to go through at some point and do what WTF is this, a little short videos on some of these engines and some of the components. And when I finish this here and check the shifter, I will be doing a quick set of instructions for the owner, which for the average guy, probably no point watching that. It is specifically for the owner. So I hope that's been helpful, and we'll talk to you again soon. Catch you later. G'day Liam, here's your instructions for your trials truck wiring loom. Take the wiring loom, put it onto the engine. It was really simple, eh? In this bag, these are all your old connectors. And one of the VVTi plugs has got the end of the VVTi solenoid inserted in it. So please check your VVTi solenoid. I've got some coming, they're arriving soon. I've sold my other ones. Okay, going down by the crank sensor, you've got these 2 wires here. That's oil pressure. Black one can be an earth. It isn't an earth yet. And thinking about it, I almost probably should have put an earth up into here, which wouldn't be hard for me to do actually. But I didn't. But I might. So when you get this, there might be a black wire in the bottom here. That'll be an earth as well. So there's a brown and a black marked oil. It's good. This side, H2O. Kind of looks more like a K, but it's H2O. H2O, that's water. So it's up in here. It's this area here. There's stuff in the way. Trying to do a quick video and there's stuff in the way. It'll be this one. Here it is, look, there it is. There's a blue and a black. Again, the black can be used for an earth. If you're just using a single wire, just use the blue wire. When you start the engine, please make sure that this here flap moves. Okay, so it sits like that. When it starts, it moves. Excellent. Check the earths are done up. There and there. Good. Make sure it's got this airflow meter with the 10mm bolts in it. Must have that airflow meter. So that's the engine side of things done. Easy, put it on. Over here, this big plug plugs in. Imagine that. You can't get that one wrong. That's got like all the main wiring going through. Actually, wait. There's something in this wire. See this white yellow? It's got an L written on this plug. That's the alternator light. So that's a negative. So that you do the alternator circuit with that one. Okay, good. You plug this into the ECU. You plug these ones into the ECU. You can't get them wrong. Coming down here, these are our fuses. The Alt S fuse also supplies 12 volts to the ignition circuit. Okay, this is ignition in. This is your start input. Comes from the key, so they're both protected. Alternator S does the start power, permanent power, and it does the alternator main supply for the battery, or the battery sense. Transmission does the transmission, and it does this orange wire over here, which can be used for gauges. Easy. Injectors, that does the injectors. Coil, that does the coils. EFI 2 does the other engine related stuff on the engine. So oxygen sensors, the purge solenoid if you're running it, the AVIS. The ECU, that does the ECU, yeah, good. BM plus BM is the drive-by wire, and plus B is main battery power to the ECU. This is all pretty self-explanatory. EFI relay does the two ECU and the EFI fuse. Ignition does coil, injector, trans. Fuel pump, start, and fan are their own ones. Fuel pump comes out over here. Fuel pump FP, 12 volts only, give it a good ground. Fan, giving it the one fan relay. If you need to put another in, you can just tuck it in. This one here, put 12 volts onto that stud from the battery, preferably through like a main fuse. That's up to you though. OBD2 plug does work. Over here, these are the two that also go to the dash. So this one is mainly for the key. The white wire, 12 volts, battery power all the time. So that's your supply to the key. Red is feed to turn everything on. Green is start, makes it go. Green for go. Even though red stop, that makes it go. Don't worry about that. Little purple wire for your tacho from the ECU. It's a 4-cylinder signal. Orange is the is a ignition supply. So it's a 12 volt with the key on. Fused from the trans fuse. It's fine for gauges. You can use gauges for that one, so you don't have to put other power supplies in. Connect them into here. I will make sure I give you some extra terminals, eh? Hopefully I'll remember. In this plug, a lot of these are for the switches for your transmission. Okay, I'm sure you know how to use them. Put these things in the dash. Maybe I'll take some photos of these for you and put them on the video as well, so you know which way to put them in if you just disconnect them. But that's the 2 low, and this is the drive 4. If you want to put that on your overdrive button or anything else, you just leave the earth out and run the other two. So that works just fine. What else is in here? Stop lights. If you were using it as a full auto, you would definitely connect those two in. 4 wire. So one of them is got 12 volts when the brakes are off, and the other's got 12 volts when the brakes are on. Which way round is it? Sure, it's... So it's black, orange is 12 volts when your foot is on the brake, and black, green is 12 volts when your foot is off the brake. So open circuit when it goes on. And I think I put a check engine light. That's a check engine light right there. That's a white orange, and that one there is an earth. There's a spare earth over here for your gauges too. So that's another one there. That big black one there in the middle, that's an earth. That's going to go to your key. The switch isn't going to be present. Pretty sure that's all sorted. That'll be easy as. Hope that's helpful. Check that AVIS comes on when you turn the key on. Make sure your fuel system is correct. Now you do have a regulator in there somewhere. Apart from that, put it on, make it go. Should be a piece of cake. Talk to you later. Yeah, mate. Talk to you later.